Hello, so I just want to talk a bit about the London mosque attack, specifically the Finsbury Mosque attack, which is a large mosque in North London. Um, so this is what we know in the early hours of last night, of this morning, I should say. Van rammed into worshippers coming out of late night prayers. Of course, it's Ramadan, and knocked down at least 10 people. Um, well, we know that 10 people have been hospitalised, 9 people hospitalised, and unfortunately, one person has died. So this has rightly been seen as a major incident. And all the evidence shows that this was definitely based on a hate crime. That is, that the attacker deliberately targeted these people because they were Muslims. I think that is very clear. As I understand it, the attacker has been named as a 48-year-old man from Cardiff. The footage I seen showed him to be. I didn't think he looked like a white guy myself, based on the footage that I saw. That's just my conjecture. It had just been the lighting, but he actually looked like a dark-skinned man to me. Um, that's that. So let me be very clear about this. As a white non-Muslim, I unreservedly condemn this terrorist attack. It is a terrorist attack because it's politically motivated violence, and it was absolutely the same sort of nature as the two bridge attacks that we've seen this year in terms of a vehicle being used to cause as many casualties as possible. Um, I take the view that any ideological act of violence, um, where the intention is to cause as many casualties as possible, has to be seen as an act of terrorism. The same applies for the far left gunman who opened fire on the American congressman last week. Um, this is now the fourth incident that London has faced this year. It has been a truly awful year in terms of terrorism. Of course, this time the target was the Muslim community. The other three attacks were Islamist in nature. And again, I say I unreservedly condemn this. Apparently, a local imam by the name of Muhammad Mahmood actually, along with others, helped to diffuse the situation, because what had happened was some worshippers had tried attacking the attacker, and apparently he held them back until police arrived. Now, that deserves credit, because it's human nature that when you're attacked by someone to fight back. So he diffused a tense situation. It could have got very, very ugly very fast. Um, he diffused that because obviously they wanted the suspect to be handed over to the police. Um, the Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn, Sadiq Khan, and Cressida Dick, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, have all called this a terrorist attack. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about because there is a few narratives being put out there that I think need to be challenged. Firstly, there are people claiming that this is not being covered. That is utter nonsense. Since this occurred in the early hours of this morning, it's been the absolute main headlines on the BBC. So there are some people trying to push a victimhood narrative. Oh, it's Muslims, therefore they don't care. Well, quite clearly that is not the case, because it has been the headline news. The Prime Minister's chaired a Cobra meeting, as she did with every other terrorist incident. I don't know how you can claim that this isn't being treated seriously. The emergency services were within the scene within minutes. So this is just not true. Um, to those saying, oh, what are non-Muslims going to say in terms of condemnation? Well, I, as a non-Muslim, have condemned it. No caveats. I've condemned it. It's wrong. Period. Um, thirdly, there are people who are using this unfortunate incident to try and suggest that this proves that religion has no, that terror has no religion. I'm sorry, but I just don't agree. Terror may not have a religion, but that implies that there are no religious terrorists. There are. There simply are. In the Dhaka cafe attack 2 years ago, the attackers specifically killed people when they could not recite the Quran. And there have been many, many similar incidents. So I just don't accept that terrorism is abstract, that it has no ideological basis. I've made this point many times, and I repeat the point because it is true. Um, In fact, in this situation, what I would say is you cannot say that the far right do not have extreme elements, because they do. And if it turns out that this was some sort of neo-nationalist attack, it's some sort of revenge attack, it is what it is. And what I've been saying actually to neo-nationalists is, don't downplay this. Don't say the guy had mental health problems. Call it what it was, a terrorist incident. So this works both ways. And what I would say to any Muslim people who are watching this is, it's the same principle. When Islamist attacks occur, don't say it's got nothing to do with religion. Don't say it's got nothing to do with Muslims. I, as a white man, or more importantly, as a non Muslim, I am saying this is terrorism. This is an act of hate. This is an act of extremism. I'm not trying to downplay it. So I would implore people, don't downplay Islamism either. And those who say, oh, well, this shows that the other side's just as bad, I'm sorry, but again, it just is not on the same scale. It's not. Um, there is a problem with neo-nationalist extremism, as we've seen with the killing of Joe Cox and now this incident. Also, earlier in the year, the attack on the mosque in Quebec City. There is a real problem. But I think it is not helpful to say, oh, well, this is as bad a problem as, for example, the situation that non-Muslims face in Islamic theocracies. It just is not comparable. Not comparable at all. If you look at the way that non-Muslims are persecuted in countries like Pakistan, you cannot compare the response. What have we seen here? We've seen an immediate response. We've seen the emergency services on the scene, and we've seen people widely condemn it. When Christians are routinely persecuted in countries like Pakistan, you do not see widespread condemnation. I'm sorry, but you just don't. So those are the facts. I hope this is going to be the end of this. 4 attacks in 1 year is enough. I give the Imam credit for his quick thinking in terms of diffusing the situation. And as always, the emergency services were impeccable. Um, I hope this guy gets a whole life tariff. This was an attempt to kill as many people as possible. As it turned out, one person died, but there will be people with life-changing injuries. There will be some who say that the Finsbury Park Mosque has a track record. That is a fact. That in the past, the Finsbury Park Mosque, frankly, did have a problem with extremism. It did harbour hate preachers, and it did harbour Salafist ideology. That is a fact. But as I understand it, the management of the mosque has been taken over in recent years, so it has somewhat reformed and it's been more inclusive. So that has to be welcomed. So if this attacker thought he was getting some sort of revenge, it was deeply misguided. What I would say, if people think that certain mosques are harbouring extremists, leave it to the police to do the job. Report that to the police. Report that to counter-terrorism. Don't take matters into your own hands and kill innocent people, because there's absolutely no evidence that the people who were targeted last night are terrorists or even Islamists. So it helps nobody, and I unreservedly condemn it. So that's basically my stance on this. What I would say to the sort of nationalist right is, don't downplay it. Don't say, oh, the guy had mental health problems. It wasn't terrorism. This was terrorism, right? But what I would also say to any Muslims who are trying to exploit this situation to push their agenda by saying, oh, look, the Muslims are under attack. Firstly, this was an awful incident, but so far it is an isolated incident in terms of this sort of scale in Britain. This is, from what I can tell, the first large-scale mosque attack. I'm aware that mosques have been vandalised, which is bad, obviously. But this is the first large-scale terrorist incident involving a mosque in Britain. So let's put things in context. Um, and for those who are saying it proves that terror has no religion, I'm sorry, but it doesn't. Not at all. This does not for a second change the fact that pan-Islamism is a global problem. It doesn't change the fact that there is rampant persecution of minorities in Islamic countries. Um, and I would suggest, look at the contrast how this has been dealt with versus how the persecution of minorities is dealt with in Islamic countries. Because in those situations, the government might condemn it, they might order an investigation or whatever, but quite frankly, large segments of the population openly support such attacks. So I think there's a big difference in the response. So I'll leave it there. Unfortunate incident. I hope those who have been wounded recover fast. And I hope this doesn't happen again. Thanks for watching.